USGP SOMA workshop together discussing issues in climate change and global health. Well, we didn't decide on that topic yet, but so we have hopefully. Are there SOMA people here? Or did everyone that just renew? Okay, so we're having a CUSGP collaboration with a couple SOMA members. So we realize this is a semi-controversial topic. We also have addressed gender identity. So I think we have the Affordable Care Act and abortion to cover, and we'll have addressed every controversial topic in America. But we have been putting this project together for a couple months, so we hope you like it. And we really want this to be more of a discussion based and get your ideas about this and how you feel people respond to this kind of thing. And so we're going to basically roar through a presentation and then let you guys discuss. So, hit it. Okay. So of the articles I read, this phrase came up multiple times, that climate change is the biggest global health threat of the 21st century. And because climate change is such a scary and kind of aloof topic, I don't think it gets discussed enough, which is why we wanted to bring it up with you guys, just to get your reactions and kind of plant the seed that this is something that multiple organizations, the United Nations, WHO, the World Bank Group, are all starting to address. In fact, the World Bank Group just put out like a 130-page report, which I read at least 3 pages of, so that's in it somewhere. But this is something that we just wanted to get in the back of your minds. So this is something we will be addressing and pushing for policy change for. So let's go back to 6th grade. So why do we have global warming / climate change? What is the research behind this? So basically what's happening is that everything is made of carbon, right? Basic molecule of life. And what happens is we need CO2 in the air. It actually keeps our Earth warm, and that's a good thing for us. However, that happens with the natural progression of things dying, carbon being released naturally. But in the industrial age, we decided to basically mass burn these fuels. So now we are exponentially shooting carbon up into the air and increasing the levels above every toxic gas we can. So about 80% of carbon dioxide is caused by industrialization, and the rest is by land use. So basically, we at this point are just putting everything, we're using the Earth's resources at an exponential rate, and it's all because of human use. So there's an organization called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they've been doing studies for the past 10 years or so about effects of climate change. And the World Bank report, the Lancet, University of London, a bunch of organizations got together to kind of make a census report on what our world is going to look like in 100 years, or by the end of the century, not 100 years. So basically what they're predicting right now is that there's a 3.5 to 4 degrees centigrade warming from pre-industrial times by the end of the 21st century. This is a conservative estimate. This is if all the countries who have already committed to reduce their carbon emissions do actually what they say they're going to do, and that's sort of unlikely actually. So this is a conservative estimate, but it's one that's probably going to be more like 7 degrees. So currently, in the past 100 years, our world has actually increased the temperature by 0.1 degrees Fahrenheit, which doesn't sound that much. However, that came from, since the 1960s, the rate has increased 3 to 4 times. So in the past 40 years, we've been doing most of this damage, meaning we're accelerating it in a very fast way. So currently, this is just a bunch of statistics, you can read it later. This is not really actually what I want to talk about. Next slide. So yeah, again, there's a 20% chance that our world will increase 4 degrees by 2100 if we make our goals, which countries are not really doing. So the research that they made out this wide sweeping prediction of what will happen, including unprecedented heat waves, drought, major floods, which will have serious impacts on our ecosystems, etc. One of the critiques of these studies is that they are doing these kind of huge sweeping generalizations about what will happen, and the focus is going to start to be on local communities and actually what the effects will be there. So just be on the lookout for that. So 4-degree world, if this rise happens, the sea levels will rise. There are multiple countries that will just be obsolete. They'll be completely underwater. There'll be extreme aridity, drought, temperatures, ocean acidification. We're already destroying our coral reefs. I'm sure you've heard media on that. Destruction of large ecosystems like the Amazon, decreasing biospecies, kind of the things you think about when you think about climate change. So again, if we don't reduce our carbon emission, this is what is projected will happen. So what I really want to talk about is that second bullet point, public health system damage. With the reason that healthcare practitioners are becoming so important in this conversation is because they found that really the only things that people care about when they talk about climate change is not like the sea level is going to rise by 15 to 20 centimeters, because I don't really know what that means. That there's going to be these extreme heat droughts in countries we've never heard of. No one cares about that. However, people do care when you start to talk about health effects and increasing rates of asthma, increased cardiovascular disease, countries that are not able to provide food for their constituents, increased fetal mortality rates. Those kinds of things are what get people's attention, and we are the best people to be able to address those issues. So the scariest thing about climate change is that, sorry, this is an incredibly dramatic slide, is that the rich countries that are making most of the CO2 production are going to be largely inconvenienced by climate change. We'll have to modify our lifestyles, maybe not have the things on demand that we used to, maybe just have a little bit less variety in everyday lives. But the poor will essentially just die because it will affect them the most. They're the ones most vulnerable to decreasing food products. There are already several areas that are struggling to get water. Those things will affect poor communities the most. So, in conjunction with a bunch of different organizations, these are the 2015 Millennium Development Goals, which basically the World Health Organization? No. What? United Nations, thank you. They basically put out these wide-sweeping goals of what we need to do, and a lot of these climate change effects. For example, improve maternal health. Population growth is a contributor to climate change because the more humans we have, the more demands we have, the more carbon we produce. And so there's a lot of talk about focusing on family planning in a safe way, eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. Food shortages is not going to help that. So climate change is kind of in the background of all of these different goals. So before we move on to goals, I just want to kind of have you guys bring it back to home. So name disasters that have happened in the United States in the past even 5 years, like Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Sandy. Yeah. Anybody else? So the point is that we already are experiencing a lot of these effects at home. Even in Iowa, we had some slight flooding last year, and that I don't even think that most of us noticed. However, we had this huge public health announcement in the beginning of the year saying we needed to all buy water filters because there were nitrites in the water. And I think a common misconception is that we automatically assume we have a clean water source. We automatically assume that the EPA is monitoring our air. We automatically assume that the foods we eat are safe. And that's really not true. And if they've done like large water sample studies across the United States, and like they're incredible amounts of contaminants. I think in Minneapolis the contaminants were antidepressants and caffeine, which is kind of funny what it says about the city. But the point is that we have to start paying attention to what we're doing to our Earth, because it really is coming back to our health. I was just reading some statistics about smog. Everybody knows about smog. But there's 40% of the country that the EPA does not even monitor smog levels. And obviously, how does that affect us? What do kids come into the ER for? Asthma. And do you think smog makes that better? Probably not. So there are a lot of things. Also, we eat about 4 times the amount of meat that Japan does. And what is our number 1 killer in this country? Meat. I haven't seen meat directly kill anyone in a long time, but it does contribute to cardiovascular disease. So there are a lot of things that climate change is playing in the background that we just need to start highlighting those areas. I have like a lot of statistics that you can just come up and ask me.
All right, so I'm going to kind of fly through this. These are the goals that the Lancet article kind of outlined, and I'm going to kind of talk about a few of them, but a lot of them have to do with research and kind of developing, even a lot of things don't get a lot of attention if it doesn't have a dollar sign attached to it really too. So what they kind of pointed out was that if we look at what happens if we don't do anything versus if we make interventions, like how that will affect global health and climate change as a whole, then maybe that will get more, generate more attention and maybe kind of motivate people to act against these things and kind of improve the world. So I'm going to go through a couple of them. So a lot of it is research and information. And the problem that we have here is that the majority of our research is in developed countries and not developing countries. So we have a lot of information on heat stroke in the United States, but we don't really have that in Southern Asia or Africa, and then that leads to a bunch of problems because that's where the majority of these problems are happening. They don't have access to primary care, which we'll talk about later in a second, but that's where we kind of have these issues, and so we need to focus more on these developing countries in order to get them up to date so that we can take care of them the best that we can. And then also, a lot of things are about food security, and so we can't just rely on GMOs. We have to make sure that we're using water irrigation and other methods to help secure food sources in the future, especially with climate change. So it's not just relying on technology, but also relying on other methods that we know work. There we go. Policy changes, fun mic. Policy changes are also important, and managing carbon activities. Different countries are doing different things to battle this. Switzerland has had a carbon tax since 1991, which is pretty advanced. We're still working on it in the US, it's still very controversial. And there are only regional areas in areas like Colorado, Maryland, and California that have carbon tax in the US. And so we kind of need to get on that level too. And other countries have, like the UK, are going to plan to decrease their carbon output 80% by 2050, which seems like a very lofty goal, like far in the future, but it'll come up sooner than we think. So. And then also looking at multiple things. If you look at the World Health Organization, they only deal with health. If you look at the World Trade Organization, they only deal with trade, but it's really integrated. When the UK went to go look at things decreasing carbon output, it affects transportation, agriculture, health. It's not just, I mean, we know this as osteopathic students, that it's not just one thing, it's a conglomerate of everything. So it's kind of looking at things on all the different levels and how we can affect things that way. And then access to primary health care, which we can kind of, I know that we stress a lot about going on mission trips as students because we want to get experience. So this is something that maybe we can kind of help assist. We're not permanent caregivers when we go on these trips, and we understand that, but they need to set up a primary health care, and maybe we can help ways to promote that by going on trips and promoting water sanitation and even doing things from home. A lot of people don't have the money or can't raise the money to go on trips, but you could promote things in your own communities. I have a couple organizations that are very, like, Better Business Bureau accredited, that you can raise money and do like a basketball tournament and say it's like nets for nets. And so then that way you can raise money for mosquito nets and send them to these areas, or even water sanitation, irrigation. Even if you're going for a medical mission trip, it doesn't mean that you can't do hard labor while you're there. I know that our school's trying to set it up so that we can set an area in the Dominican that we've gone to for several years. We're trying to set it up so we can have clean water for them, because that's only going to help facilitate health in that area. And also educating people on these issues, and like on whatever the area that you're in, whatever common issues are occurring there, and educating them while you're there about preventative methods, that's also very important. And so the carbon footprint of the poorest 1 billion people is around 3% of the world's total footprint. So that's pretty amazing to think about, and just like we had spoken about earlier, developed nations are going to be the ones that are hit the hardest and are going to have to change their view and how they react to these things. So we had given out sheets, and we wanted to make this really like collaborative. So if you could get together in
So get together, and we originally were going to have SOMA and COSGP from each school get together. So if you can do that, or just turn around and work with like 5 or around. So just take 10-20 minutes, calculate. We want you guys to calculate the carbon footprint of what you think an average person in your school is. And what we're trying to get at is calculating that, and then maybe thinking of ways that you can change those things in your school. Hopefully stand up and talk or whatever. Hopefully people can hear you. Or I can give you the mic to hear. So, who wants to go first? Okay, I will. Go ahead.
Trace from Oklahoma State. First of all, thank you for your presentation. A question I had, or a statement question, would be, wouldn't climate experts agree that pointing to specific environmental events to support climate change is misguided?
What do you mean by that?
Like you had us list certain environmental events that have happened in the past year to support climate change. Would that reason be misguided?
As in, like, not necessarily it's climate change affecting that natural disaster.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that's, some of these things happen naturally. There have been natural disasters since the world was created, our continents shifted, a million years ago, whatever. But the research is showing that these are happening more and more often. And that, almost every country in the past 10 years has had their hottest summer ever. You can't talk about a state without talking about their crop loss. And actually, it's really interesting, so I'm going to talk about this physician a little bit, but she came to Des Moines and she was talking about, we were just talking about people's reactions, and like you said, people doubting that really this is anything abnormal than what's naturally going to occur. And she said, actually, the physicians were a little bit more resistant, but the most receptive population were the farmers, because they have been dealing with this, and they realize that every year they're having to get more and more subsidies because of the rising temperatures. So, yes, some of it would just happen, but the research is showing that it's happening. Unprecedented heat is happening everywhere, and
My name is Schwarzkopf from Tecum, Texas. I just have one comment to add. There's recent news that I heard, I didn't look too deep into it, but it was something like for how much the air temperature has risen, the ocean water temperature has risen 8 times that. So most of the heat is going into the ocean. And that's something that's real because how many poor nations depend on the food from the ocean?
And not only their food, but their industry, tourism, using coral reefs. And there's also some evidence that with the rising temperatures, there's increased ocean acidification because of rising temperatures. And then there's some linkage between that and the amount. The coral reef provides some protection from things like hurricanes from developing. I think I know marine biology, but yes, that's it. So what did you guys find out in your surveys that surprised you? You went back to me. But yeah. What? Yeah, somebody stand up and share. I mean, we all are medical students here, none of us are even. Yeah, Houston, go.
Something I kind of find funny and random, but flying out to COSUP would kill on Earth.
Seriously, that's things you don't think about, that you have to fly places.
Yeah.
And, I stand up here giving a climate change talk, and I'm using a non-reusable coffee mug and a plastic water bottle. And, it's really, really hard to think about living your everyday life without the basic conveniences of living in a developed country. So, let's roll with that. Keep talking. Anybody else? Go for it, Ms. Tara.
So Tara Hughes, COSUP. I recently was at the World Health Organization working, and actually this is a really huge topic there. It's getting much more attention. So they are looking at developing countries and how this is really going to take a big, like you said, it's going to take a big impact on developing countries. But also on waste management, they're looking at that. And so anyway, it's just so you know, like, this is a topic that is really going to be in the news more and more and more. So we have to engage in this conversation, whether, no matter what side you're on, whether you're Republican. So,
Layla Nancy B. Carmen Carolina campus. There are a lot of our schools who go on mission trips to Honduras, El Salvador, countries like you said who are going to be most affected by the climate changes. Are there suggestions or tools that we could be using to take with us down there as students go, as far as things to kind of help the health status as it is now and what will happen soon?
Yeah, I will let
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is improving like quality of life, so making sure like the things that are going to be most affected are going to be, there are more waterborne illnesses because of the way that the climate is changing and things of that sort. So it's improving water sanitation, improving education on hygiene in general, and like things of that sort, more like preventative medicine, I guess, I would claim. And then also improving, making sure that they have like a stable crop. It's basically, you look at the essential things you need in order to survive, and improving those things in addition to healthcare. They don't have primary care necessarily in all these places, which is why we're going there, and that needs to be developed, but also they need to have like, the basic cores of life in order to survive, and the things most at risk are water and food. And so it's kind of improving those things as well. So it's looking at the whole issue, not just like the healthcare. Because you can give them medicine for a year or a month or whatever for blood pressure, but if they're going to die of some waterborne illness, it's or malnutrition,
And little things that you can tangibly do as you're going there, like she talked about, making a fundraiser where you're bringing a bunch of malaria nets. And another thing is working with organizations. The Global Brigades, for example, DMU uses them for our Honduras trip. The Global Brigades, before they let any medical brigade go to an area, they go there with a water brigade. So they make sure that they have a sustainable water resource. They have, what are their other brigades? Public health brigades, dental, and they have, it seems like an education or social something. So there are organizations that are looking at that. So supporting those, and maybe if you're a student taking a group, partnering with maybe a school like a public health school, or saying, hey, we're going down here, would you want to bring a group of students to do water brigade too? So.
Houston Louisiana University. I kind of have a question for everyone. Kind of goes more towards our campuses. Is there any schools that have anything that they do for sustainability or conserve, things for their campus that helps, that students are really excited about, that other universities can do?
Joe Anderson, Unicom. Something we did last year, which we haven't started back up again this year, but we started doing CSAs that the entire Unicom campus could sign up to do. So CSAs, community supported agriculture. So essentially you could do a buy-in at the beginning of the year, and you'll get, every week or every 3 weeks in the winter time, you get your basket of food. And because we were doing it as a group, one person would just have to take a trip out to the farm and get, 20 bags of food to bring back. So it was a really great way to do kind of organic food and that kind of thing.
Fritz Brink, LME DCOM. We've worked with some of the other health students in our school to set up a recycling program in both or two of our main buildings where we hold our classes, because there isn't one in the city that's really easy to do, so people have to drive out of town and actually turn in the recycling. And it's something that if you're in a rural area where it's not necessarily easy to do recycling, that you can set up relatively easy and get involved in.
That's really cool. Another quick promo for the website. We should share all these ideas on the website. I don't know how to do it, but I'll understand it. Go ahead.
I'm Amos B. from KCOU Kansas City. One thing that so we get rid of all paper for all our students, got all iPads. So we got rid of paper, but then we bought iPads. So I don't know if that really outweighed. I just thought of that. But also he installed like water drinking. We all use water bottles here. There's like a water bar filling station all over campus too. So that helps save on plastic. And every time we fill it up, it has a counter. We're up to like thousands already all over campus. So it's kind of cool. It shows us that. So I hate water bottles. Thank you.
Jennifer at ASCOM. We have a club that goes to homeless shelters every week, and we have a drive once or twice a year for shoes. So you can recycle your old shoes, and they go to the homeless people. So it's helping that, and you also recycle shoes.
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of something that's up to you guys to. The one thing I've noticed the most is, so I went to college in Minnesota, not Minneapolis, but and it's a community thing there, and you just, like, people will go take newspapers and things out of the trash that people threw in there and throw them in the recycling, literally. It happened every day. So, I mean, there were more recycle bins than trash cans, and it was very much a social pressure thing for you to live sustainably somewhat. People made fun of people for driving their cars from 2 blocks away, and why didn't you just walk? So this is something that, yeah, you can bring back to your campus and start to create an environment where you can help each other do this. And it can be done. Even the doctor who came to talk about this at our school, there's a Gunderson Health Systems in Wisconsin, actually. Their goal for 2012 was to create a sustainable hospital system where they were net zero in energy expenditures. So they reframed their whole hospital, and they actually took the fumes from a brewing company and turned it into energy in Wisconsin. So they've done it, and it just took a group of people that were passionate about it to make the change, and they now have a completely net.
And there are other things too, like a lot of it's raising awareness. So you could do, I know you had brought up Meatless Mondays, or having a day where, I don't know how feasible it is either Kentucky's in a rural area, we generally live a lot closer, but you could find a common point where people could like walk or ride bikes to school for like one day, just kind of like raise awareness or something of that sort to kind of get students involved and like taking these types of presentations to your classes and, you know, realizing that this is a big issue and finding other like community outreach things to do to make people more aware.
So, TCOM again. I'm a second year, so I haven't spent a whole lot of time in the clinics and hospitals. But I did see a couple weeks ago, I was in the cath lab, and they were just doing one stent procedure. And I was standing there next to the trash can. It seemed like by the end of the procedure, the trash can was filled up. And we all know that hospitals use a lot of energy. So it might be more effective to target specific groups instead of the individuals that we just looked at.
Steven Sedgwick, Utah, California. We have a program actually called MedShare. Sorry about that. I was being knee tickled. Moving on. What MedShare does is they go to all the hospitals and they have bins there, and because we have procedure kits, and a lot of doctors don't use a lot of the stuff in procedure kits. They put it all in a bin and they sort it out and it goes out to third world countries and people in need. So MedShare, it's a company you can contact and see how they got started and see if you can bring it to your area.
There's a couple of them out there. There's one. What? Partners for World Health. It's like there's another list here, but yeah, there are a lot of companies where you can just ask a hospital to partner with them, and they will take all that stuff. That's great. One thing I wanted to kind of gauge from you guys is like, I mean, I was talking to my preceptors about this presentation, and they, it's like, yeah, I'm doing a presentation on climate change and global health, and they look and they're like, that's great. You don't actually believe in that, do you? And I was like, well, that's awkward. So, I mean, what do you guys think about it? Do you think that our generation is pretty aware of this, or do you think that there's still more resistance? I mean, yeah.
Dr. Herman, PCOM. What I think about it, when I was an undergrad, I knew a professor who was working on a way to take CO2 and convert it to something else by means of a catalyst. And I fear that because it's such an issue, it might take some revolutionary discovery to actually fix it. I mean, we can start now and start to reduce it, but we look at these numbers, and it's just mind-boggling, like what needs to be done in order to actually fix it. And I think eventually that's what might happen, is we might have to start flooding money into research for this specific issue and see if we can find a way to scientifically remove the CO2 as opposed to changing our habits. Because I don't know, I mean, we will, right? But I don't know if everybody will. I think it's going to be a really tough issue that we're probably going to deal with in our lifetimes for sure.
Alto I think this issue's been politicized so much that right now it's just like where you stand on the political spectrum, and they just taking this and just, you know, whether you're totally against it or you're totally for it. So if we were able to step back from that and just kind of see it for what it is and see it for the facts, we'd probably appreciate it a lot more.
The physician that I've talked to about this, she said that she's met a lot of people that are basically in a lot of denial about it because, like you said, it's a huge, I mean, these numbers are terrifying. And the fact that they're just getting worse is even more terrifying. And she said that the best way that she gets to people, which is again why I bring this to you guys, because is talking to people about their health and relating it to as, I'm a physician and this is the symptom that I see and this is what I would do to fix it. I'm not going to lie to you about it. You know, and she just brings it back to like the fact that your child has asthma because we don't really have strict guidelines on how much smog can be in the air, you know, and bringing it back to the fact that this is affecting you, not just because there's a Russian heat wave and 70,000 people died, you know, and bringing it back to home and coming at it from a health perspective. Yeah.
Lucy Stuckey, so what you were saying, and this is something I agree with, is that it's a global issue. So, I feel like we're talking right now, and you know what we can do as individuals but, like, I went to Ghana this summer, and you see them, like, everyone burns their trash, and they burn it because they have no access to do anything else. So I feel like there's sort of an issue of your economic status and your access to even healthcare, or just the basic, you know, things that we really take advantage of because we're in the U.S. So, and like you were saying with asthma, like in El Salvador, they have their stoves inside. So they just breathe in tons and tons of, yeah, so it's also about the access.
Yeah, definitely. And even then, they're not even contributing those, which is crazy. So we have a couple more minutes, just we have a couple wrap-up slides.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, this is, what you can do about it. For eat more vegetables, meat is a huge, huge carbon producer. I mean, not just because they're animals, but because of what we have to make corn to feed them, the runoff that happens. There's just a lot of, it's scary how much our industry in America has because of mass production of meat. And supporting farmers who are doing it in a sustainable way, and which is happening more and more too, that you can find farmers who are using grass-fed cows and are not mass-producing meat.